Our story today will tell you about one of the greatest survival stories you may ever hear in your entire life. 6 teenagers decided to escape from their school in search of a better life, but their adventures quickly turned into a terrifying nightmare. When their boat crashed in a violent hurricane, they found themselves stranded on a deserted island with no inhabitants, where these boys faced hunger, isolation, and terror for 15 months. Their families, after being exhausted by the long wait and losing hope in their return, held symbolic funerals to commemorate them as if they were gone forever. But amidst this complete darkness came the surprise that changed the course of events entirely, turning this incident into an eternal human epic overflowing with courage, determination, and resilience. The events of this true story began in the year 1965 in a country known as the Kingdom of Tonga, a nation consisting of a group of small scattered islands in the Pacific Ocean, precisely on the eastern coast of Australia. The heroes are these 6 teenagers you see in the picture in front of you: Sione, Stephen, Kolo, David, Luke, and Mano. They were all students at a Catholic boarding school, meaning they lived inside the school building itself. This educational institution was subject to strict and repressive rules, and the students had limited freedom, as they were only allowed to go out once a week under strict supervision by the teachers, who were monks and nuns. Under this harsh and oppressive system, our 6 heroes, aged between 14 and 16, grew up in an environment that stifled the spirit and suppressed ambition. They often gathered to share their dreams of freedom and imagined a world not ruled by orders, where they could do as they pleased without supervision or restrictions. And one day, the 6 friends gathered in the lunchroom as usual, and Sione, the oldest among them, proposed a bold plan to escape from this school. And when they asked him about the escape destination, he answered without hesitation, "We will go to Fiji, the island located in the same region, where life is better and more beautiful than living in the Kingdom of Tonga." The distance between Tonga and Fiji was very long. Despite that, they began planning their journey. And since none of them owned a boat, they decided to steal a boat belonging to an old, quick-tempered fisherman who had had many disputes with them earlier. They agreed to set off at night to give themselves enough time to get away from the island so that no one would see them during the escape and reveal their secret. That night, an hour after bedtime, as soon as they were sure that most of the students and teachers were asleep, they quietly sneaked out of their rooms, climbed the school wall, and escaped towards the beach. There they found the old fisherman's boat waiting for them. After preparing the boat, they packed some fruits in addition to a small gas stove to cook the fish they intended to catch at sea during their long journey. Their innocence and lack of life experience were reasons for their weak preparation for this journey. With their simple skills, they could only gather a small amount of food, which was not enough for such a long sea journey. Their choice was limited to some bananas and coconuts, which are resources that cannot be relied upon for a long time. And the astonishing thing is that none of them thought to bring basic navigation tools, like a compass or a map, which reflects their recklessness and haste in embarking on this difficult adventure. The distance between Tonga and Fiji was more than 750 kilometers, and without any map or compass to guide them and keep them on the right path, the chances of reaching their destination became extremely slim. And just 2 hours after their journey began, things seemed to be going well. But as dawn approached, the boys began to feel tired, and exhaustion slowly crept into their bodies because they were not used to staying up late at night, given the strict discipline of their lifestyle at school. Moments later, sleep overcame them one by one, until they all succumbed to sleep on the boat's deck. While they were sleeping, the sails opened automatically, and the winds played with them as they pleased, causing the boat to drift in random directions away from their original course. Suddenly, the boys woke up to the sound of thunder and found themselves in the midst of a violent storm in the heart of the ocean. They quickly tried to raise the sails, but soon discovered that the sail was completely torn, and they had no way to control the boat. The 6 teenagers spent long hours in the storm, holding on to whatever they could of the boat. They struggled against the fierce winds and violent waves. They tried to hold on to the boat to prevent it from sinking in the ocean. Finally, after the storm calmed, they noticed that the weather had improved. But they found themselves in a dangerous situation. They had no idea of their location, and they had no means to steer the boat towards a specific destination. They remained on this fragile boat for 8 exhausting days. The sea waves tossed them around as they pleased. At the same time, their provisions were very scarce, depleting little by little. When thirst began to ravage their bodies, they resorted to collecting rainwater using coconut shells. They rationed the water and shared it among themselves, 1 sip in the morning and another in the evening, knowing that running out of water meant their end. They also tried to catch fish, but their limited skills did not help them. To their great disappointment, they couldn't catch even a single fish. After 8 days of suffering, hunger, and anxiety, luck finally smiled on them on the 9th day when they saw a small deserted island ahead of them. It was the first piece of land they had seen since leaving the kingdom of Tonga. But their joy was met with a harsh reality. They had no sail or oars to help steer the boat toward the island. So they resorted to using their bare hands and whatever primitive tools they had to paddle. Fortunately for them, the waves were somewhat favorable, helping them to slowly advance toward the shore. By evening, they got closer to the island, but their joy quickly faded when they discovered that its coasts were surrounded by sharp rocks and steep cliffs. The scene was terrifying, and the fierce waves mercilessly pushed them toward the rocks until their boat was completely destroyed. Despite the dangers they faced, they miraculously survived with minor injuries. They tried to climb some rocks to reach the top of the island, but they couldn't because the waves were violently hitting them and hindering their ascent at every moment. They repeatedly tried to climb the rocky cliffs in search of an exit or a safe path to the mainland, but all their attempts failed. During their arduous search, they found a small cave inside the cliff and used it as a temporary shelter to hide from the relentless waves and catch their breath, heavy with exhaustion. After a journey that exhausted their bodies and wore out their spirits, after taking a rest, they gathered their strength again. Then they continued their repeated attempts to climb the cliff. But this time they headed towards a steeper and more dangerous angle. They began to climb slowly and with great caution, fully aware that any small mistake could cost them their lives. Thanks to their strong determination and patience, they finally succeeded in overcoming the cliff and managed to enter the island after being exhausted. As soon as their feet touched the sand, they collapsed from fatigue and fell into a deep sleep, only waking up with the sunrise the next day. From here, their true journey for survival began. They had arrived at an island known as Atta. This island was very beautiful and at the same time remote, deserted by inhabitants since the year 1863. In the past, it was home to a tribe of indigenous people, but they were subjected to surprise attacks by slave traders who kidnapped the men, women, and children, leaving the island completely devoid of any human presence. When the 6 boys woke up from their sleep, they began searching for food and shelter. With their simple means, they built wooden huts from the available trees and made wooden spears. They sharpened the tips with stones to use them for fishing, but they faced great difficulty in the first days as they had no means. To start a fire, they were forced to eat the fish raw. With the scarcity of fresh water on the island, thirst began to gradually wear down their bodies. They were forced to hunt seagulls, drink their blood, and eat their eggs. In those moments, food no longer had flavor, and drink had no taste. The important thing was to keep them alive, because they knew very well that without these foods they were eating, they would not survive, and their fate would be death. After 6 months of endurance and suffering on the island, they finally managed to light a fire for the first time. That was a huge achievement for them, as they spent many long weeks trying to rub stones and sticks, experimenting with all possible means to ignite them. But all their attempts ended in failure. At the same time, they were forced to eat food raw, but now they can cook their meals from the start. They were careful to light fires in 2 different places as a wise step to ensure that the fire remained burning. If one went out, the other would stay lit. The fire was not just a means for cooking for them, but it became a symbol of hope and a crucial turning point in their journey for survival. Given the value of fire, which became a precious treasure in their eyes, they devised a precise system among themselves called the fire-keeping schedule, through which each of them took turns adding wood and ensuring it stayed lit day and night. As for the second fire, they deliberately placed it on the edge of the island to serve as a clear signal to attract the attention of passing ships and be seen by sailors' eyes, hoping it might one day bring them rescue and return them to the world of civilization. One day, the boys went to the island's cliffs to catch some seagulls, and they managed to catch a few. However, Stefan wanted to catch more while he was trying to grab another seagull. Suddenly, he slipped from the top of the cliff, and he fell from a height of approximately 15 meters, hitting the rocks below with force. Luckily, he survived miraculously, but he suffered a broken leg. His companions rushed to rescue him and did their utmost to help him climb back up and return to the camp. Due to the fracture in his leg, Stefan entered a new phase of suffering that lasted for 4 full months, and he became reliant on his friends' support with every step. And over time, the boys began to appreciate the simple tools and resources they found on the island more, which encouraged them to continue exploring. They found pieces of pottery and primitive knives left by the indigenous people before. They also encountered some chickens, which were a great blessing for them. They never expected to find such treasures in this deserted place, and they began to cherish everything they found. Then they gathered palm fronds and built simple huts to protect them from the sun's heat and the cold of the night. They also established a small farm where they planted bananas and beans, and they continued working on it with determination until they reaped the fruits of their labor. The creativity of these boys did not stop at mere survival. It extended to organizing their daily lives. They even set up a primitive gym, using handmade weights and benches. They also built a simple badminton court to relieve stress and break the routine of the days. Even music was not absent from their world, as one of them made a simple guitar using coconut shells and some wooden planks to satisfy their passion. Who remained alive despite the harshness of isolation. The signs of cooperation were clear among them, but they were not perfect, so it was natural for disagreements and conflicts to occur. Therefore, they devised an internal rule stating that if a conflict intensified between 2 people, each should isolate themselves in a different corner of the island as a way to calm the situation and restore psychological balance. As the days passed, hope began to fade. Returning home seemed a distant dream. Nevertheless, they did not lose hope. They built a wooden raft using the wood and dense branches available to them, hoping that this fragile vessel would be their means of survival from the island. But at the first test of that ship against the fierce ocean waves, it did not hold up. It broke apart and sank under the force of the water. It was as if the sea swallowed their dreams all at once. It was a harsh moment. Even if they managed to sail, the ocean was capable of swallowing them without leaving a trace. The boys remained steadfast on their island, sharing their responsibilities day by day. One takes care of the fire that has become a symbol of hope. The second watches the wildlife. The third is tasked with monitoring the sea. The distribution of tasks was not just a means of survival, but also a psychological comfort and a way to distract their minds from the despair that creeps in with each passing day without rescue. It has been long months since they were stranded until the awaited day came, the day that turned the tables and changed everything. Stefan, the vigilant guard assigned to watch the sea from a high cliff, was performing his daily task as he did every morning. As his eyes scanned the sea searching for a glimmer of hope, he spotted a small ship passing near the edge of their deserted island. He ran towards the shore at full speed, waving his arms enthusiastically, shouting from the depths of his chest. Then he plunged into the water and began swimming with all his might towards the approaching ship. However, the big surprise was when the ship's captain pointed his rifle at Stefan as he approached the ship, fearing for himself. Signs of confusion and worry filled his wrinkled face. "Here," Stefan whispered his name, filled with hope and exhaustion. Then he quickly explained the situation to him. "I am not alone, but with 5 other boys lost here. We have been stranded on this deserted island for 15 months. After that, the ship's captain slowly lowered his weapon. His eyes were filled with conflicting emotions of astonishment and pity, as if the scene before him was unbelievable. This ship was captained by Peter Warner, an Australian fisherman who came to the island after seeing a column of smoke rising from its dense forests. Despite his prior knowledge that the island was deserted and uninhabited, he approached to verify the matter, driven by a mysterious curiosity, unaware that he was about to witness the greatest survival story. Then the other 5 boys climbed onto the boat to join Stefan. Peter stood astonished. He couldn't believe what happened. How did these boys manage to survive for 15 whole months on an isolated island under nearly impossible conditions? Captain Peter Warner sent a radio message to the coastal authorities, informing them of news that defies belief. The 6 boys who were mourned greatly due to their loss over the past 15 months are still alive. On the other hand, the families of the boys had held funerals and sad memorial services for them after waiting for so long and losing hope in their return. And when the authorities informed them that their 6 children were still alive, this news was like an emotional earthquake. It shook everyone's hearts with a mix of overwhelming astonishment and indescribable joy, and deep sorrow for those months they spent believing they had lost their sons forever. And once they reached the shore, the boys were immediately surprised by their arrest because the old fisherman whose boat they stole to sail had reported them to the police, and they were not even given a chance to hug their families. And here, Captain Peter intervened once again, a man who was not wealthy but had a big and noble heart. He contacted Australia's Channel 7 and suggested they produce a documentary film telling their full story. The channel immediately agreed and sent a filming crew to the island, paying a generous amount that allowed Peter to compensate the boat owner, leading to the release of the boys by the police. This is how the filming of the documentary began, capturing the emotional moment when the boys met their families and were reunited, a moment where tears mixed with laughter and astonishment with hugs. After regaining some of their composure, the 6 boys returned to the island, accompanied by the filming crew. They returned to the scene of their battle, not as broken victims but as heroes, telling the story of their victory over the impossible. They did not intend to return to school again. Instead, they joined Peter in his fishing work, where they learned a lot from him, helped him with his hardships, and shared life's details with him. As filming ended and days passed, each of them pursued their own professional path. Despite that, one of them continued working alongside Peter for many years as a deeper bond developed between them that went beyond survival, a bond forged by fire, hunger, hope, and friendship. It started from the heart of a deserted island that once seemed like the end of the world. Yet it became their new beginning. Thus ended the saga of our 6 heroes who defied hunger, solitude, and the violence of the sea. This story reminds us that willpower and cooperation can turn the impossible into reality, and that hope remains a flame that never extinguishes, no matter how intense the darkness. In our hearts lies the secret of survival and success, as long as we believe in it and hold on to it strongly. And you, dear viewer, share your opinion with us in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to our channel to receive all the latest updates.